Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar brought to you by me, Paddy McGrath, as your friends from Text Help, in conjunction with, of course, our wonderful friends in the BSME. Hopefully, this is not your first webinar with myself, Patrick, and I do hope after today it will not be your last. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend the next 45 minutes or so looking very specifically at teaching and learning and using technology, particularly related to audio, to help our multilingual learners in each of our classrooms. So what I'm going to do just to kick things off is I'm just going to share my screen right now. So I'm going to pop over and I'm going to pop right the way down into the bottom left-hand side of your screen. So you see much less of me and much more of the session today. And today's session title is The Power of Audio to Scaffold, Support and Build Fluency. And we'll be looking specifically at oral fluency and using audio recording tools, audio memo tools, audio creativity tools, and audio in general, and understand how that might support our multilingual learners across all areas of learning when they're in the classroom. I'm going to be looking at this as a very practical guide, a guide that takes you through a number of different technology tools, many of which are freely available, most of which are available on all platforms. So you can just use these in a web browser, which means you can use it on any device. I promise not to get techie on you today. I promise to hopefully tie everything that you see into a positive teaching and learning outcome. So this is a practical guide. It is very fast. So at the end, I'm going to put up my email address, a special email address actually, with a quick instruction, and that'll let you access some resources from today, which will give you the links that you need and also some further help and advice and tutorials on expanding the use of these. So if something catch your eye, write it down really quickly. At the end, send me this email and we'll be able to get you access to some links and some further information. So a quick introduction from me as we go. I'm Patrick. Most people call me Paddy McGrath. I'm head of education strategy at Text Help. You can probably tell from the accent from my language. I'm based in Belfast in Ireland. I've put my contact details on there. Do feel free to reach out to me after today, or of course, by all means, follow me on Twitter for lots and lots of helpful tips and tricks. And coming to you from Text Help today, we're of course really well known for things like Read and Write and Equatio and WriteQ, Orbit Note for PDFs, lots and lots of wonderful tools in use by millions and millions of students across the globe, 60 million at the last count, I think. But today, of course, we're not here to sell you anything. We're not here to talk about those products. We're here to talk about technology in general. That said, one of the things that I suppose from a Text Help perspective, I feel we absolutely share with this session and is important to mention is our mission at Text Help. And our mission is this: we want to help everyone understand and be understood. So if we think about where audio might fit with that, audio is actually very central to that because we need to be building written fluency, but we also need to be building oral fluency, building language acquisition. We need to be supporting pupils that have very specific support needs, as well as every other pupil in our classroom. And so when we start to think about the technology tools, this starts to become a very clear mantra. And who wouldn't agree with this statement on the screen? Helping everyone, every pupil that we have under our care, understand and be understood. And there's certain dynamics, of course, in a multilingual classroom that make that statement even more paramount and even more important. And so, what I wanted to do really is just think about that and think about the active use of voice, the active participation in giving people a voice to share their language, their multiple languages that they may have, to be able to express themselves. And we know from research that audio in particular can really, really strengthen support and scaffold learning as pupils go. And whether that's to do with language acquisition or new vocabulary, whether it's to do with fluency or development or higher level thinking of that language, we know it's there. And research points to things like audio in particular helping things like reading accuracy, helping comprehension, fluency, reading speed, pronunciation, expansion of vocabulary. It also shows actually there are positive outcomes when it comes to things like recall. So when we're thinking about things like retrieval practice mechanisms as well, audio can help fit in with that if we give our pupils the voice and the choice of technology tools to do that. And we can support and deepen the understanding of learning when we start to listen to it. And that's particularly relevant for our multilingual students. And the last thing, which I think is very important, early days of technology in classrooms, a lot of technology companies talked about engagement and the importance of engagement in the classroom. And of course it is, and it's a very central tenet. But what we see with audio is sometimes for a number of students, it can really help increase motivation to learn. So, for example, using dictation tool rather than typing allows us to express things faster and can sometimes motivate pupils. Same is true of listening to content as well, can motivate their learning and drive that forward. So, look, we know that the statistics support audio as we go. But if we think about it just from a teacher's perspective, think about each of us as an educator. And if somebody were to say to you, right, where is audio important? We can very clearly articulate a number of different words where we know audio helps us. Pupil expression, comprehension and understanding, because listening to pieces helps pupils understand more. Pronunciation, we've mentioned, language acquisition, repetitive practice, and most importantly for me there when it comes to audio is good quality modeling of language, particularly when it comes to new terms, new phrases, and new words that pupils have come across. Reinforcement, retention, diversity in terms of individual needs and supporting those needs. So we're not just thinking anymore about the multilingual support, we're thinking about multilingual support layered on top of pupils who might have a specific support need there. And of course, culture as well. The ability to share actual voice rather than just written text within a multilingual classroom really does help promote diversity in culture because we're starting to hear voices and we're starting to give people's voices as well, even more when it comes to technology. For too long with technology, we've been confined to sort of non-creative use, that typed word, that written word on the page. Nothing wrong with that, but let's start thinking about how these tools can now be more powerful for pupils and give them a wider voice and respect that culture as we go. And there's one framework that I talk about quite a lot that actually is very relevant to today, and that is Universal Design for Learning, or UDL. Now, if you've taught in the American school system at all in any shape, manner, or form, you've probably come across this. An organization, not for profit, called cast.org really pioneers this across the United States. But this is very heavily used now across our schools across Europe and the UK. And Universal Design for Learning really says, look, there are three areas that we need to expand out to be more inclusive when it comes to learning. Number one, how we represent content to our learners. So give them different ways to consume content. Number two, how we engage learners. So can we give them something that's culturally relevant or building on prior knowledge? And number three, at the very end, is how can we give pupils ways to articulate their learning in different ways? And that is very relevant to today's session because if we think about the traditional way we use technology tools, that typed way, that written way, we want to layer on top of that, as I said earlier, and we want to provide ways to use audio within that. That gives them another means to approach both understanding, consumption, listening, embracing content, but also gives them a better way to explore that and articulate that learning. And it's really important that we give pupils these options, and that's really what these few tools that we're going to go through today can help us with. If we think about audio, there are some very obvious things that pop up here on audio, right? We all know audio books. So audio books are useful to promote within classroom because we're building that understanding, that different means, that multiple means of listening to content rather than just reading. But of course, we can read in parallel to that as well. Audio books are absolutely important. How many of you are using podcasts in the classroom as well? Encouraging our pupils to subscribe to podcasts online, age appropriate, content appropriate, using these for activities, the what's next or the discussion activities there as well. But allowing and encouraging pupils to use podcasts from a consumption perspective, from a listening perspective, very, very important. Most of us will not use overly podcasts in the classroom environment itself, but wonderful activities. Go home, subscribe to a particular podcast about the topic we've covered, listen to this, and then expand out from there and be able to use voice to express what you've learned. These are different approaches that we can use audio for. These are very simple things, and these are hopefully very obvious things, but they're not the ed tech tools you may be familiar with as you go. And actually, one of the most powerful ed tech tools in any classroom is this, is the microphone. Now, it doesn't have to be a big microphone like this, or if you can still see me on the screen, a big microphone like this. Every single one of the devices, excuse me, that we're using with our pupils in our classrooms, excuse me, has a microphone on board. That microphone on board is there to listen, is there to be used. So simple tips and tricks and activities on every platform. Think about activities like talk for writing. Simply taking a Chromebook or an iPad or the device and putting that in the middle of a group discussion and using the simple voice recorder that's built in. Just simply allowing a pupil to record what's going on in the classroom, whether that's recording you or recording themselves in a group discussion. Imagine that pupil, that multilingual pupil, learning through the medium of English, being tasked with a group discussion as part of an activity. Perhaps they're having to write about that activity after they discuss it or create something after that. The power of enabling them to just press that record button, to be able to listen back to the group discussion that's went on, is going to help build their understanding. It's going to help build their confidence because they don't have to re-ask those questions that were discussed. So they've got access to that. That's on every single device that every one of us have. That microphone is the single biggest important tool that we can have when it comes to voice in our classroom. It gives every pupil a voice and empowers all of the technology that we're actually going to look at over the next 30 minutes or so. And so if you think about that simple ability there, talk for writing as an example, simple activity. There's lots of activities that have put in our audio guide that I'm going to share with you at the end. You can just use nothing else apart from the microphone in and on your device. And of course, you'll be using that maybe already with things like the translation tools on there, the dictation tools you might be using to render language on screen. So we're starting to use voice more than we probably actually are aware. And so if we expand that out, and let's think about how we might get more practical in this as we go. So let's get practical. And what I'm going to do really, really quickly here for the purpose of today is just fly through a couple of different tabs that I have on my screen and show you some different ways that audio can be used. And then I'm going to finish off with some things that we could use in the home environment, some things that we could encourage our parents to use, some devices that we already have, things like Amazon devices from Echo as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go into a couple of different tabs. And there's a very simple one to start off with. And this is just on screen. It's just a simple document. This is a Google document, simple comprehension piece. This could be a Word document. It could be a web page. But one of the most powerful things that we obviously do at TextHelp and every single device has built in is text to speech. And it's a supremely powerful tool. Just being able to place the cursor, being able to press the play button,
like the earth is made up of one big solid rock,
and listening to audio read aloud, that's helping with comprehension as we go. We're able to slow that down. It's helping with modeling. It's helping us if we just find an individual word as I go. So there's a new word here, and I'm going to play it out. There's dense. That's a new word. I'm not sure what this is, and I can have that played out loud. So whether you're using Read and Write or Claro software or App Writer or Don Johnson Snap and Read, whether you're using Immersive Reader, whether you're using an iPad with built-in text to speech is there in every single device that we have and available on so many different platforms. And it's so important to the fundamental understanding to be able to listen to words on the page. So no matter where these words come up, no matter where this language is being acquired, no matter what type of content we're giving to your pupils, we're giving them the ability to listen to that out loud. Really important. But the other thing that many of these tools can do is also repurpose the content from an audio perspective. Now, what I mean by that? Well, that text to speech, if I want to take this entire piece, all of this piece, I can select all in the vast majority of these tools, and I can take what I call an audio maker here on the screen, but I can also do that and turn that into an MP3 maker. And what does that do? By simply pressing that button, it takes all of the audio that's on, sorry, all of the written text that's on the page, and it turns it into, you'll see just down the bottom of your screen here, an MP3 file. So that means that I have been able to remember universal design for learning, multiple ways to consume learning. I have taken what was just a web page or a Google document or a Word document or a PDF, and I've turned it into an audio file. Remember, we said audiobooks are really useful to encourage students to listen to words and help with comprehension. This takes any piece of content you have and turn it into an audio book. So really simple tools to start to use audio as we go. Now, how could you expand that out a bit further? Remember UDL, and we said, well, we wanted content to be represented in a different way. Audio is useful to do that in this case. But then what about expression of learning? There's lots and lots of ways we can do this. So I'm going to jump into a PDF. We're going to think about on up the school, on up the age bracket, may have a comprehensive textbook, PDF textbook. But what's important to voice in this is being able to give pupils the ability to leave voice notes, to be able to articulate their learning as they go. And many of the comment streams within a lot of the tools, whether they're PDF tools from people like Adobe or people like ourselves at Text Help, you can, as a pupil, simply go, right, I need to understand this line a little bit better as I read through the textbook. And of course, you'll all be familiar with leaving comments, but what you may not be familiar with is the fact that in a tool like OrbitNote, as an example, you can leave a voice comment. So I can, as a pupil, say, now press that button. So it enables the microphone. Remember the importance of microphone. And I can just hit the button, and now I am free for 60 seconds to explain this sentence. I'm free to explain what my understanding is, to express what I've gotten from the sentence, to express what this new word means, to record this for up to 60 seconds. I'm just going to press stop now. And what that means now is that comment is there on my PDF. So every time I come back to revise or review, I can listen to my voice. And that could be in my mother tongue, or it could be in the medium of English that I happen to be learning in. Irrespective, it helps me explain the content that's on the screen through my voice. And that voice is very, very important. So, irrespective of the language, irrespective of my fluency, I can use that voice recorder to help me revise and review as well. So, on a similar theme, simple tools like Vocaroo. Vocaroo is free and online, vocaroo.com. And Vocaroo is so simple to use, and I can use this on any device. And all I need to do here is I can press the button and I can leave a very short voice note. So I can leave up to 90 seconds really easily. So this could be an instruction to my class. It could be a voice note that as a pupil I want to record and share with my colleagues. I might want to add it into other pieces of content, say a slide deck or to a show that I'm doing. And if I just press pause, you'll see here now that that is recorded on screen. You'll see I've recorded 20 seconds. Dead easy for me to play it back. Can you hear me play it back? But also save and share here gives me a link. I can share that link through Google Classroom. So for example, I could add that note onto Google Classroom or a Microsoft Teams instruction as a voice note if I'm a teacher. If I'm a pupil, I can use that now to articulate a piece of learning, and I can pop that in anywhere, in a Google document, in a Word document, in a PowerPoint deck, in a Google Slides deck, in a PDF. I can put this absolutely anywhere. And as a teacher, you can also grab this as a QR code. So you can grab this as a QR code, which means that pupils can scan QR codes if these are placed around the classroom on new pieces of vocabulary or new items around the classroom that we're trying to get familiar with in an alternative language. I can add that QR code. Pupils can scan that with their device and go straight to that voice clip and listen to it. It's a really free, simple tool. But imagine the number of ways we can encourage pupils to create a voice note, and we can add them in absolutely anywhere. Imagine as an educator how you can bring your voice into this as well. So, irrespective of the language, irrespective of the task at hand, we've got a tool there that can do that. Another really cool tool on this is ThingLink. So ThingLink I use just for a bit of a laugh at a lot of conferences. I will try and start to teach you lovely people that attend conferences some Belfastish, my own little form of multilingualism. So localism and colloquialisms in Belfast, because they're very hard to understand at times. But I use this tool to illustrate how we can take what is a static image and bring voice to it. So this is a tool called ThingLink. This allows me, and I'll show you in a second just how we do it, to bring in a static image. So this is just a map of Northern Ireland with some words on it. But behind each of these, I have those words that I have recorded in voice. So as I explore this map, I can press the button. Northern Ireland. Okay. And now you can hear that language read aloud because as a pupil, I've been able to record my voice and add some text in there as well. So I can have all of this read aloud as I go. Okay. So This gives me and the ability at this point in time to listen to my words, but also record my words through the voice. So think about how we might expand learning on that. If I go to something like this, okay, so this is my creation screen. So what I've done is I've just opened up literally an image directly within here. So here's an image of Ireland as a whole. And now this is just static. This doesn't have any voice in it. But because I'm in the ThingLink environment, I can press my edit button. I can add a very quick tag. I'll say at this stage, I'm going to add text and media. Okay. So I can move this around here. So this is my text and media. So I could say beer, because this is not going out to our pupils. We can talk about this today. I can say beer. Okay. So I've got beer there. But what I can then do is I can go here and I can say, this is a pint of Guinness, which is what Ireland is very well known for, north and south. Guinness is our beer of choice. I can stop that and record it. This is a pint of Guinness, which is what Ireland is very well known for, north and south. Okay, so now I have this. I'm going to move this and I'm going to say, right, that's my pint of Guinness. Now, think about this for a second. If I press done, now what I've done is taken what is a very flat resource and I've added a voice to it. I've added a voice. I've allowed my pupils to express what they're seeing in this image in their voice. So when they start to explore it, and they go and they find what is this thing. So this may be a cultural reference. This may be an explanation. So for example, I can click here. This is a pint of Guinness, which is what Ireland, and that will read the voice out loud. Now the same thing applies. If I go back here and I say, from a learning perspective, I say, right, well, actually, my activity is here is an image of a volcano. It's unlabeled, right? And what I want you to do is provide your voice to that. So within the ThingLink environment, I can take this unlabeled thing and I can label it up, but label it up with my voice. So I just edit and I'll go and I'll add a tag and I'll go and add text and media and I'll put that this is a side vent. Okay. And now underneath, I can explain what that is. This is a sine vent. This is where the volcano vents from the side. This is a sine vent. Okay, so right here now, I'm going to place this and I'm going to place this over the label, which means whenever I go back to view this as my outcome from this particular learning task, I have my static image, but I've also got my voice here as well. This is where the volcano vents from the. So I can add images and pictures to that, but most importantly, I have added audio and I've added voice. So I've got lots of ways that I can use ThingLink. ThingLink has free accounts, it has paid for accounts. We use it in Textile for our exploration tools to illustrate how pupils can actually use a toolbar as an example. But there's so many applications on thinglink.com for teaching and learning and for particularly using voice and video and media. So there's lots of ways we can use this. So I'm just going to close those two out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to think for a second about podcasting. And now podcasting is so useful as a mechanism to introduce audio into the classroom. And so there's various stages that we can use and think about our outcome here. This could be topic based. It could be a book review. It could be a mini movie trailer. It could be an episode, an interview. It could be a persuasive writing task because we're maybe writing an advert and we're producing the jingles around that. So a podcast is not just about the traditional podcast that we may be familiar with and we may all subscribe to. A podcast is a really useful storytelling thing that introduces audio, both in terms of pupils' voice and in terms of soundtrack as well. And what I'm going to share with you at the end of this is just a simple podcast planning sheet. And this is courtesy of the Learning Network. And this is just a really fabulous resource because if we've got a task and we want to say, right, ultimately we want to record a podcast because that's important for our listening skills and our oral skills, this podcast planning sheet will help us do that. So this will set out the lead question that you might want to apply. It may also then start to define roles and interviews. What music will we use? What are the talking points? What's the storyboard and the outline? Nothing glamorous about this document, but it's really useful. But remember what we could do. Remember earlier on, we had a PDF resource up there as well. As a teacher, I could apply voice to this as well in multiple languages or in a single language. So what I could do is I could just take this podcast planning and I could go over here and I could add that voice note. Okay, class, today we're going to undertake a podcast activity, and this podcast activity will require you to work in groups of no more than four, complete this sheet in 30 minutes, and then we're going to show you the tools that you need to do podcasting today. So you could issue that comment really easily and place it on as a voice, so pupils know that that's there. I'm just going to delete that for the purposes of today. Um, so I'm going to delete that. But what you do is you'd share that PDF document digitally with your pupils, and now they have a voice note. They're able to listen to you. But also, if they did not want to write on this or print it out, they could use their voice to brainstorm the ideas. Remember, talk for writing at the outset? We could use that to record and place the audio recording in the PDF. And now we have the group discussion that we've had. But if pupils and students want to pop in individual things in terms of responses to the boxes that you see on screen, use the voice note for that as well. So there's lots and lots and lots of ways we can use even just that podcast planning sheet for voice. And if you start to think about some of the other very powerful tools for voice out there, and many of you may well have come across this, but I'm going to talk about this in a little second from the purposes of podcasting. And it is the Mote extension. So Mote again is going to work anywhere on your iPads, and your web browser, and your Google Slides. But podcasting with Mote is really useful. Why? Because if we go back to that planning sheet and we plan it out, this will also give us the capability to use Google Slides in this template that Mote provide to start to sketch out what is it in this podcast I want to record. And these are little short sound bites, because what that enables us to do, we can use the Mote extension. So imagine this slide is there, the Mote extension is installed. Now pupils can record really easily by just popping up here to the Mote extension, opening the Mote recorder, pressing the start. And now, in this particular free version, I've got 30 seconds and I can talk about episode one. Episode one is all about audio and the power of audio in the classroom. And we've already seen ThingLink and Vocaroo and Read and Write and lots of wonderful tools. And when I tick that box, I can press the insert button. And that means now that that voice recording is actually added directly into my Google slide. So it's in my Google slide, and you'll see it just represents itself as this little audio snippet. So I can move this around just like an image file. And that means when I play this slide out, I can listen to my voice recording on each of the episodes. So it's a really simple way to introduce the concepts of podcasting. And it doesn't matter whether this is topic based, whether this is writing based, whether this is language development, whether this is interview, whether this is creativity, whatever we're using, we're giving pupils the ability to use their voice through technology in a way that supports and scaffolds them with their language development. And of course, Mote as an extension is not just useful for things like our podcasts here, but it's also really useful for adding notes into documents, useful for recording quick audio clips, and again, it's cross-platform. So a really powerful way. And don't forget the ability of tools like this and Read and Write that you saw earlier, and Vocaroo, and these tools that provide the ability to give feedback to pupils. We can use the same tools that we have seen in the hands of pupils to provide audio feedback. Much, much, much richer feedback in the language of choice as we go as well. So that's podcast number two. And podcast number three that I'm just going to mention here, I'm just going to close a couple of these tabs as they go. So I'm going to close this one. Podcast number three is something a little bit more advanced, which is Soundtrap. And this is brought to you from a small company you might have heard of called Spotify. And Soundtrap is really good. This is Soundtrap for education. Makes it really easy to go further on up the school and make really comprehensive podcasts. So I can enter my studio in my podcast. Okay. And now that's going to take me to the Soundtrap Studio. And what you'll see here, right here, it'll give me a template for a podcast. So it's an easy wizard to start to get our pupils to work through. So I can go through here and I can add a new track. So I can add a new track, and you can see here that I can add in drums and beats and sound tracks. I can add sound effects, but I'm just going to add a microphone directly in here. And now what I've got is the ability to go right the way up to this. And now I can start to say, welcome to today's podcast brought to you by TextHelp and BSME. So that's great. I now have this directly on the screen. Okay. I can move this around. I can edit it. I can crop it. But what I can also do right here is I can add something else. So I can add something else, and I'm going to add this. And then I can go and I can directly add in some additional clips. So, for example, I could add in some audio snippets that directly come into this. I could add in an additional voice. And what's really useful about this is I can have multiple pupils contributing to this, both in the same classroom and in remote classrooms. I can have dial-in guests, but it's really, really easy to use. And we have a much longer session on Soundtrap, other friends at Soundtrap. But it's a wonderful education tool. And you can also use things like GarageBand to introduce the same concepts, the ability to add sound effects and voice tracks, the ability to have remote dial-ins. All of these are available on these key tools. This is just working in my web browser. I don't have to install anything. I just have to head to the site and I'm indeed good to go. Now, another one that you may well be familiar with in your classroom is Canva. And Canva is used for lots and lots of wonderful design techniques. It's a really, really powerful tool, Canva for education. There's a free version, there's a paid for version. Lots of people now turn to Canva to be able to create some very image rich and very powerful presentations. So, as an alternative to PowerPoint or Google Slides, as an example. So, directly on here, we're able to use Canva to create audio now. So on Canva, we have the ability after we've created, so I've created this wonderful template, and this is just as a pupil, I'm looking at famous landmarks across the world. So I've pulled in my images, I've created my deck. I could, of course, get up in front of my class now and share that. Okay, I could speak fluently about my slide deck, but I may not have the confidence to do that. So what could I do? And this comes back to universal design for learning, giving pupils a different way to express their learning. Well, in Canva, if you've produced a presentation, I can go to present, and right here, I can go all the way down to present and record. And then I can go to next. And now this is going to say, take me to the recording studio. So on the recording studio, what's it going to give me? It's going to give me my picture. You can see on screen. It's going to give me the ability to set my microphone. And now I'm just going to press the start recording button here too. So if I start to record, it's going to count me down. And I could have had some notes in this top right hand side to guide me. But I'm going to say, this is my presentation about famous landmarks around the world. I can then skip to the next slide. This is the Eiffel Tower in Paris, in France. And this was built by Gustave Eiffel, whose company designed and built the tower way back in the last century, 2 centuries ago, I should say. So I can talk through each of these slides and I can add an audio narration. And once I press the end recording, it's going to take my audio, my spoken word, and this could be a collaborative piece. It's going to meld it on top of my rich Canva that I've created. So now I've linked up visuals, I've linked up design skills, I've linked up creativity, and I've actually used my voice. And that voice is now presenting that learning that I've had. And that's important because it's helped build confidence because I've done it in a different way. So I have the ability to add that link in anywhere. I could share it with Google Classroom. I could just present it directly on the screen. Any different ways that I can use that link. I can pop it in a Google document. I can pop it on a web page. I can pop it in Microsoft Teams. I can share it with the world if I want through my LMS. So I have a link now. I'm going to save and exit that. But now the recording is there and I've been able to add my voice and use my confidence now to articulate my learning within the Canva environment. And there's lots of ways we can use that recording studio there. But again, today is just a whistle stop tour of some ideas and ways that we can use audio as we go. And the other ones, this is a I really like this one. And I've used this one for a number of years. And this is a tool called VoiceThread. And for me, it's always been about how can I take what is a fairly static piece of learning, an image in this case, and in many of the cases that we've seen, and how can I enrich it more? How can I encourage my pupils to interact with it and to use their voice to help articulate what they're seeing, what they're learning, to help express their viewpoint, and to help illustrate that? And so what I've done in this case is I have a couple, and I always keep kind of similar themes so it's consistent between the tools that we're using on these sessions. But I've got a hydropower plant. So, and I've also got a wonderful map of Ireland here. So if we go straight into VoiceThread, what VoiceThread really enables me to do is take those flat pieces, as I've said, and create and layer additional pieces of content right directly on top of those. So I have an image here that is a skyline of my wonderful home, which is Belfast. And I'm just going to click this because actually, for the purposes of this task, I may want to label things up and perhaps express something that's unique about my home and where I come from to represent my culture or my city. This may be something that is, as you saw earlier in the slides, that may actually be tied in directly to a topic. You saw the hydroelectric power plant from earlier. So this is really easy for me to use because this is just me talking through this piece. And all I need to do here is press the make a comment button. I can record some video pieces. I can record just some pieces using my phone. I can record some type pieces. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the audio recorder, which is the one right in the middle, and I'm going to start to record the audio. It's going to count me down, as you can see. And this is the wonderful city of Belfast. This is the skyline. But what I can also do within this is I can pick up my tools. So as I'm talking through, I can say, this is the cranes that help build our ships. This is the botanic gardens that help protect our plants. This is the fish that represents the maritime history of Belfast. And this is our most famous pub, the Crown Bar, where many tourists flock to. And if I stop recording right now, it is now recorded the annotations and the voice in real time as I go. But what I can also do within this is I can pick up my tools. So as I'm talking through, I can say, this is the cranes. Okay. Help build our ship. So I'm just going to save that one. But you'll see now that I've taken what was a very flat image and I've turned it into an interactive resource. I can share this link. I can put it into a document. I can pop it back to my teacher on Google Classroom. I can put it up and share it on the screen. But it's given me confidence. It's given me voice. It's given me an alternative way to articulate my learning through audio. These are very, very, very important tools. They're simple tools to use. This just works in a web browser. There's also an app available for it as well. There's a free plan for schools. Lots of ways we can get this started. But the importance there is to give the tools to our pupils, give them access to the microphone, and encourage them to use that in ways that supports and scaffolds them as they go. So just a couple of last things as we start to wrap up this short session today. So beyond VoiceThread at this stage, I want to think about reading, and I want to think about reading aloud at this stage. Now, we saw earlier at the outset that we can have things like Read and Write or Clara Read or App Writer. We can have Snap and Read. We can have Immersive Reader. All these tools will help us listen to pieces read back on, for example, a web page or in a document. But what about actually practicing reading that as a pupil, giving us our own voice there as well? I'm going to show you one of the tools, and this could be a tool similar to on Read and Write. We call it Practice Reading Aloud, but there is also tools like Reading Progress tools. But this allows us to have things read aloud. So I'm going to go to just a web page at this point in time, and on this web page, I'm going to open up, in this case, the Read and Write toolbar. And once this Read and Write toolbar opens up, this is going to give us access to our practice reading aloud function. So this is opened up directly on the screen, okay? And now this is just a pupil, and we're saying to a pupil, right, I want you to go and find out something that you're really interested in, and I want you to practice reading it, okay? This could be tied to a topic, this could be tied to an interest, it could be tied to a culture thing. You know how we need to encourage our pupils to read. So they've found something. This particular pupil, fascinated, this is me, of course, in this instance, fascinated by NASA. But I have my practice reading aloud button, which means I can just press that button. So my task to my pupil at this stage is find a web page and turn that into a reading piece. And once we press the practice reading aloud button, it will turn that into a reading piece and it will have that read aloud. And this means that from a pupil's perspective, they can take this piece and they can actually simply use the microphone to record the reading aloud happening on the device. Okay. Now, other ways that this can happen, if I just close this one down, I could also use a tool called Fluency Tutor within this as a teacher, and I could create this as a forced reading aloud piece. So I could just press this button here, this Chrome extension. I'm just going to validate this out as a teacher. Okay. So I'm going to validate this one out. And now it's taken all the content on that web page. It's created a teacher dashboard view of this, which is the image. which is also the text. But it allows me to share that directly with Google Classroom. So I can create an assignment with Google Classroom. And what that means is this means now that I can share this directly in one link, that reading content. When pupils get it, they'll use the microphone just in their web browser to practice reading that piece aloud. And they can submit that recording back to me. Now, what that means is actually I can go back and I can look at all of my pupils and I can see how my pupils are progressing. I can see what they've read. I can see how long they've spent reading. I can automatically have scores based on that reading there as well. So if I simply go to a web page and I just go to this web page and I press this Fluency Tutor extension, that's turned into a reading piece. It's assigned to pupils. Pupils can use their microphone, get all the supports they need for modeling and listening and vocabulary. They record their voice, the importance of oral fluency. So the microphone on our device, coming way back to where we started, is so, so, so important. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump back into our slide deck just to wrap up today. And I'm going to give you some links out. So there's lots and lots of ways that we can use our tools for audio. There's lots of ways we can underpin audio, we can underpin learning through the use of effective audio tools. But there's one thing that you may have well not thought about. And this is, of course, using the Amazon Echo at home. Most of us know her as Alexa. So the Amazon Echo at home is a very useful tool. Don't use it in the classroom. It gets very complex in the classroom. There are lots of tools there. But did you know that it has things like Open Select a Story app? It will allow your pupils to tell it to read certain passages and web pages and books. It will encourage pupils to do additional spelling so we can tell it any word and it will phonetically spell that out and letter by letter spell that out. We can get a dictionary definition from our Echo devices as well. Did you also know that you can use tools like Clio for language development? We can also set it into multiple languages. So we can set it to speak English and Spanish, or English and French, or English and German, or English and Mandarin. We can get it to set in multiple languages. So if we're rehearsing a language, my daughter actually uses it. English is her first language and she's been learning Spanish for many, many years. And she only has her Echo in Spanish. So it's repetitive practice all the time, whether it's talking to Spotify to play a song or listening to a podcast, it's always happening in that preferred language. And also pronunciation. How do you say? So you can use that in multiple languages. How do you say? You can also create multiple questions within there as well and around topics. All of these are available. I do a whole hour on Alexa and how powerful it can be at home. And a really good way to introduce parents to actually use what looks like a very common tool now in many, many of our homes and actually use it to support literacy and language development. Once it's there and in a pupil's room, it can be used in so many different ways. So it's a really powerful tool. We don't have time to go through that today, but hopefully you'll come back and join me on another session where we'll really expand that out and we can show that actually in action as we go. And it becomes fun whenever we're all saying the word Alexa very, very, very often. So, as we start to wrap up today, I hope you've seen lots and lots of things there. There are so many different ways that we can just start. If we just start to leverage and use the microphone, use things like text to speech, use simple voice recorders like Vocaroo or Mote, use enriching tools like ThingLink or VoiceThread to take flat images and make them more engaging, more interactive, and most importantly, giving pupils a voice. There's lots of alternatives. Your pupils will be the most creative people in your classroom when it comes to learning with audio. Audio can scaffold, audio can support, audio can develop. The tools are there that we need right now in front of us. So let's not be afraid of using them and giving our pupils the choice and voice to do so. Now, I need to help you out with that. And one of the things I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this email up on screen. And this email is my email address. It's specifically set up for today, edtech@texthelp.com. So that's edtech@texthelp.com. And if you simply email the word audio through to edtech@texthelp.com, don't need to put anything else in the email. By all means, if you've got questions, put them in. If you've got comments on the webinar today, by all means, put them in. But just put in the word audio, edtech@texthelp.com, and we'll get you those audio links set out. I'll link through to Vocaroo, I'll link through to the PDF planner guide, to the Spotify Soundtrap tool, link through to this presentation, and some additional help and support that we can give to you. And of course, if you just have a question, just reach out. So I want to thank you for your time today. We've been more or less bang on time today, just about 45 minutes. I hope it's given you food for thought. There's lots and lots in this, and truth be told, a webinar like this would take one thing like Vocaroo, or one thing like Read and Write, or one thing like Soundtrap, and would spend a whole hour on it. So this was just a flavor. So I want you to think about a flavor and hopefully go away thinking a little bit different about some of these tools that we may use. It's good to get started with audio, and it's even more important to see our pupils develop with it. So thank you. I do hope you enjoyed this very short session from me, Paddy McGrath at TextHelp. Don't be afraid to reach out, request the content, and we'll help you anytime we can. Thank you.